As a result of our son Jonathan's departure for school 8 months ago, Marie and I have found ourselves in the position of being empty nesters at the age of 45. When our son received a scholarship to attend Oxford University, we felt a sense of pride. Because we were no longer raising children, it was necessary for us to re-establish our relationship and begin a new life without children. I was under the impression that our sexual life would be considerably improved right away, and that we would resume our previous sexual activity, which was both frequent and enjoyable in the past. However, Marie experienced some feelings of depression for the first 2 months of her baby boy's independence because he was living on his own. In addition, I believe that she became aware of the fact that she was about to turn 46 years old, which would bring about the appearance of new wrinkles on her face as well as several additional pounds. To me, they made her look more beautiful, but I believe that she had the impression that life was moving on without her and that the years of fun and excitement she had experienced were behind her. After conducting some research, I discovered that this was a fairly typical occurrence. I made it a point to provide her with constructive criticism, a large number of compliments, and ample time to adjust to the new dynamic within her family. After a few months had passed, she finally arrived home from work on a Friday night, beaming with joy and excitement, just like my wife did 20 years ago. She was full of smiles. We spent the weekend in bed catching up for all the years that we had spent taking care of responsibilities that we no longer had. She presented herself as if she were a completely different person. Marie had already gotten down on her knees and was ripping my pants and underwear off as quickly as she could by the time I had even finished getting dressed. Marie was not a big fan of oral sex, so this was definitely something she had never experienced before. However, she did it that night, and it turned out to be fantastic. After that, she began to pull me down onto the bed, then she took off her dress and climbed on top of me. That was yet another unexpected find. This woman was who exactly? As I positioned myself face down between her legs and brought her off to a tremendous orgasm, I was once again filled with excitement and exertion. This must have been the culmination of years of anticipation, because the scream that she let out when she arrived was so loud that it could be heard for miles. It was all brand new, but it was exciting. The moment her scream subsided, I rode her hard for the next 5 minutes, which culminated in both of us having another great orgasm and collapsing into each other's arms. I was turned on, and I didn't wait because I rode her hard. A significant portion of the weekend was spent in bed, and our sexual life reached new heights that we had never experienced before. When I woke up the following morning, Marie was cuddled up next to me, smiling, and saying, "Good morning, sexy, that was an incredible night's experience. Whatever it was that got into you, I wanted to continue regardless of what it was. I love you, baby," she said before she stroked my hard-on, and we made love once more before we went down for breakfast. This was the last time we made love to each other. After a period of years, I finally had the impression that our sexual life was getting back on track and that we were about to embark on the next stage of our lives together. To my surprise, I found out much later that it was not I who was responsible for igniting her sexual desire to such a high degree, rather, it was a man from her workplace. He has shown an interest in Marie over the course of the past 6 weeks. Some of her youth and self-assurance were restored as a result of his compliments and flirting with her. It was undeniably beneficial to us in bed, but it brought about unwelcome complications over the subsequent months. After a period of 3 months, our life was proceeding smoothly financially. We were both in a secure position with jobs that we enjoyed, Jonathan was doing well in school, and for the past 3 months, our sexual lives have been absolutely fantastic, and we appeared to be more connected than we had ever been before. Despite the fact that I was still unsure of what sparked her increased sexual passion, I took pleasure in every moment of it. I had daily blow jobs, great sex every night, and I delighted in eating her. I was completely content with the fact that she felt the same way and that I was able to fulfill all of her requirements. It was a paradise. The fact that I was able to perform at this new enhanced level of sex made me feel like a prodigy. We had a long-standing tradition of attending dates on Friday evenings. We would go to an early movie and dinner every Friday night after work, then rush home and make love until we fell asleep in each other's arms. This had become a regular routine for us. To ensure that we had a life outside the house, we did this on a consistent basis. We both had a good time on our date nights and made an effort to relive our youth and reclaim some of the younger years that we had lost. As a group of people of our age, we were having sexual encounters more frequently than our friends, and I made an effort to maintain the excitement. On that particular Friday evening, she inquired as to whether or not we could go out for a drink after dinner. As she gave me that "I'll make it worth your while" gaze while smiling wickedly, she gave me a little bit of a flirtatious squeeze on my leg. A new club called The Hideaway, which was only a 10-minute drive away, was something she was interested in going to. She had heard about it from the girls at work. A lively club that featured live jazz music was there. At the bar, where we were having a couple of drinks, Marie was even more affectionate and romantic than she normally is. I wanted to take her to bed because I enjoyed her energy and couldn't wait to do so. It was at that moment that I felt her hand rubbing my hard-on through my pants. She had me in a state of arousal, and I was definitely in a seductive state. While she continued to stroke me, she smiled and kissed me tenderly on the lips. She then stopped and continued to tease me by nibbling on my earlobe and whispering naughty things into my ear. Although she was getting close to having an orgasm, she continued to do this. I had the desire to take her right there at the bar, but the band stopped playing at that moment, which resulted in us ceasing our public sexual indulgence. During the time that I was finishing my third martini, the band was taking a break. At that moment, a man who I did not recognize approached us and yelled out in a loud baritone voice, "Marie, is that you? You look absolutely stunning tonight." As soon as I saw my wife's expression change from one of a smile to one of concern, I must have had a look of shock on my face. "Hello, Brandon," she said as she introduced us in a hurry. "It is a pleasure to see you," she said to him. "Brandon, this is my husband, Charlie," as he hugged her after he had introduced himself. An overwhelming feeling of envy washed over me as my gut instinct informed me that something was not quite right. I could see the coincidences adding up even when I was in a state of intoxication, happy moods around the house, a new bar, a wife acting more loving than she ever had before, and a chance meeting with a man at the very bar that she wanted us to go to. Even though I did not have any evidence or reason to suspect that anything was inappropriate, I was now on high alert. Brandon had a voice that was similar to that of Barry White and appeared to be in his early 40s. He was also very attractive. While listening to that seductive voice, I couldn't help but wonder how many pairs of pants got soaked. After another drink, I began to relax and think that perhaps his arrival was just a coincidence. He was friendly and a good conversationalist, and I began to come to terms with the fact that he was there. After joining us for 20 minutes, the jazz band resumed their performance and began playing again. Before he asked me if it would be okay if he took my wife out for a dance, everything appeared to be going according to plan. As she led him out to the dance floor, she stood up and asked, "Of course he doesn't mind, do you, honey?" She then left me there before I could respond to her. When I realized that this was a setup, I became extremely angry. Having completed 3 slow dances, I was on the verge of leaving her there and driving home. However, I ultimately chose to remain and observe how things transpired. I was irritated by a number of minor things as I watched. It bothered me that Brandon held my wife a little too close to him, that she chose to rest her head on his shoulder while wrapping her arms around his neck, and that he whispered in her ear. These are all examples of things that bothered me. My intuition was right, and I realized that there was trouble on the horizon. The alarm bells in my head went off, and I realized that there was trouble afoot. When they returned, they pretended as if nothing had happened, and Brandon began a new conversation with my wife, as if slow dancing with her was something that was quite common. Brandon expressed his admiration for my wife and the significant contributions she made to his professional life. Marie spoke up for me and answered him too quickly, as if it had been planned, but she did so in response to his question about my hobbies and the things that I enjoy doing. "Oh, Charlie is a huge fan of Manchester United and enjoys watching football more than anything else. On the television, he never misses a single game. Do you agree with that, Charlie? It is common knowledge that there is a playoff game scheduled for tomorrow. Do you intend to watch it?" "Yes, my friend Jake and I never miss a game, and we'll be at the pub enjoying their win over Liverpool." It's your lucky day today, Charlie old boy, so take advantage of it. You see, I have 2 tickets to the game that I was just given by one of my suppliers, and because I'm not a fan of football, I was going to give them away, he said, taking out an envelope and showing me the 2 tickets that read Tier 1 center field. There were 2 tickets in the envelope. In spite of the fact that they were impossible to obtain, these seats were absolutely incredible. Immediately, I was able to identify the situation for what it actually was. When he provided Eve with the apple and instructed her to take a bite, he was akin to the serpent that was present in the Garden of Eden. I gave a sly response, saying, "Wow, those are some amazing tickets. You ought to go and take pleasure in the game." The old man, this is not my cup of tea. Since I am not going to make use of them, I would favor it if you could have them and take pleasure in the game. I mean, considering that you are Marie's husband, it would be a privilege for me to have them under your control. That was the case. My rage got to a boiling point. Despite the fact that I was fully aware of what was going to take place, I decided to purchase tickets. I was going to rip his throat out if he continued to refer to me as old chap or old man, even an additional time. I spoke in a calm manner and said, "Thank you, Brandon, that is very generous of you. For sure, Marie and I will have a good time at the game." When I heard my wonderful wife say, "Oh no, darling, I hate going to those games," I knew exactly what to anticipate. I was prepared for it. "You ought to ride along with Jake. It's more likely that the 2 of you would take pleasure in being there than I would. Please don't be concerned about me because I have a lot of things to do." "Okay, the deal is done, you'll be going with Jake the following day." I was uncertain about the extent to which their relationship had progressed at this point. I had no idea whether she had already been with him or whether she was about to start our marriage. I was unsure of both. In spite of this, it was abundantly clear that she desired him, and I was being relegated to the standings. Evidently, she misunderstood both my determination and my craftiness. I made the decision to keep an eye on this one. In addition to my gut feeling, what I observed on the dance floor, and the obvious setup that was taking place at the bar tonight, I had no other evidence. I would therefore wait for this to play out and see where things go from there. No matter how many playoff tickets or how much money came my way, I was not going to share my wife in any way, shape, or form. This was in spite of the fact that I was making plans along the way. In the event that she desired to engage in a game with another individual, she was at liberty to do so. However, I would not be a participant in the game, and her destiny would be predetermined. I recognized Brandon for who he truly was. Brandon was a man of refined taste, very attractive, and possessed a voice that was alluring. It was true that he gave off the impression of being a fun-loving, intelligent, successful, and seductive individual, attributes that any woman in her 40s would find attractive. The problem, however, was that the woman he was trying to seduce was already married and was not on the menu. Brandon was a predator who took pleasure in the game of seducing married women and turning the husband into a cuckold. He was one of those people. It provided him with power, boosted his ego, and allowed him to have free sex without any conditions attached. It was clear to me that he was nothing but pure evil. As a result of all the drinks and the time she had spent with Brandon, Marie was in such a good mood that she was completely oblivious to the fact that I had not spoken to her since we had left the bar. After we got home, she was horny as hell, but I was still angry and pretended to have a headache, saying that it was because I had consumed too many drinks. I pretended to go to sleep, but I suddenly became aware of her lying next to me. She was attempting to distract herself from the excitement she was experiencing from the evening by using her fingers. In spite of the fact that I wasn't a complete idiot, Jake and I agreed to go to the playoff game. Before I left the house, I made sure to strategically place 2 voice-activated recorders that I had picked up earlier that morning. Additionally, I activated the Find Me application on her phone while she was in the shower. As a result of the fact that they were both aware that I would be absent, I was confident that they would have the opportunity to either spend time together or talk about what had occurred the night before at the bar. I was taken aback by the fact that she did not leave the house while I was at the game, and the devices that I had planted did not contain any recordings that were particularly interesting. I continued to be suspicious and on high alert for things that were going to happen. When I returned home from the game, Marie was there waiting for me with a delicious dinner that she had prepared for me to enjoy right away. She gave me a passionate hug and a passionate kiss before escorting me into the kitchen. "Darling, how was the game for you? Did we come out on top?" "Yes, Manchester triumphed by a score of 3-1. It's possible that you must be overjoyed to have been able to watch the game from such a vantage point. Brandon's generosity was truly remarkable." "Yes, very kind, and they were great seats." Throughout the evening, Marie appeared content and maintained a smile on her face. My dismay was compounded by the fact that, from that day forward, I couldn't stop hearing about Brandon at work. The two of them shared lunches, talked about how successful he was, talked about his cottage on the lake, talked about his travels, and talked about how nice he was. I was beginning to lose my patience. Then, on a particular evening, she came home all giddy and ecstatic, and she hugged and kissed me more than she normally would have. I must say, that was a very pleasant greeting. "What exactly is going on? You're not going to believe it, but you know the opera La Traviata? You have been discussing it for a number of years." "To what end?" "Well, there is a performance at the Royal Opera House this Friday. You are aware, Marie, that I despise the opera. Would you really like to go with me?" "It is true that I do, but you are not required to go. The really good news is that about it. I had lunch with Brandon today, and he informed me that he had just been given wonderful tickets to this opera. I am going to explain why this is the case. They were provided to him by a different supplier, and they were identical to the ones that he had given you for the football playoff game. After hearing that I had always been interested in watching this opera, he made the offer to me to do so. However, when I told him how much you despise the opera and that you would not be attending, he became sad. After that, he came up with a brilliant plan and offered to take me to the opera of my aspirations, followed by a delicious dinner. Wasn't that a kind gesture on his part, baby? A lot of generosity." I remarked in a sarcastic manner, "What a nice guy," and then I went on to say, "But of course, you declined his requests, right?" "Sure, but no. How could I possibly do that? Even though I am aware that you do not wish to go, it is not a big deal at all." "Are you sure that it won't be a problem if I accompany Brandon?" "It is a very great deal. Regardless of whether I am at home or away, the most important thing is that you do not go on a date with another man. A wife would never act in such a manner. To tell you the truth, I am astounded that you would even consider accepting a date," I said, fully aware that everything had been planned out the entire time. It didn't occur to me that it would be a date. Oh my. I'm sorry that you have made such a mistake. You are familiar with Brandon, and he is a friend of ours. I'm referring to the fact that he provided you with those amazing tickets to the playoffs, and you took advantage of them. Every one of our drinks was paid for by him, and he has been a wonderful friend to me at work. I have no doubt that you comprehend," she remarked to herself with a grin. I decided to give enough rope to hang herself and see where this would lead. Well, yes, he did all that, and he seems like a nice chapter. However, I don't feel comfortable with my wife going out with another man. I would rather you not go or do anything foolish. But you're a grown woman and can make your own decision. But you know what I want." She must have noticed my anger and discontent. "Okay, darling, you don't have to worry. I understand. I didn't mean to upset you, and I'll drop it right now. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. My feelings are fine. It's my wife that I'm concerned about," I said as she came over and kissed me on the forehead. "Don't worry your silly little head. I love you, and it was never going to be a date. Now stop being jealous and let's drop the subject." We dropped it, but I didn't forget it. And when she wanted sex that night, I told her I had a headache as I was so angry and hurt from our conversation. I still wasn't sure if she had been with him sexually, but she was starting an affair with him, whether she realized it or not. And I knew if I didn't put a stop to it, there could be big trouble ahead. If she already had sex with him, then we were done. This Brandon thing was becoming a much larger problem. I told her that hearing about him all the time was making me a little jealous and I wanted her to stop seeing him for lunch. She protested and pushed back. "Charlie, I've turned down the opera tickets as you asked, but you're being foolish, and I won't stop being his friend. And if that means an occasional lunch, then you will have to be a little more understanding." Of course, I was pissed, but I needed to figure out exactly what I could do about this without adding to the rift in my marriage. Soon thereafter, in addition to lunches, it became drinks after work. When I accused her of having an affair, she swore there was nothing sexual between them, but she just enjoyed his company. "So you're not attracted to Brandon? Don't lie to me, Marie." "Well, every girl at the office is attracted to him, baby, but I'm spoken for and haven't done anything." "But you want to, don't you?" "What girl wouldn't? I mean, he's so handsome and that voice is mesmerizing." "But you don't have to worry." "I don't have to worry. How would you feel if I was going to lunch and after-hours drinks with a girl I would love to have sex with?" "Something tells me you wouldn't be quite so understanding." That conversation didn't go over too well, and things between us became a little cold in our home for a few days. She was pissed at the thought of me being with another woman and made it clear that it was not an option. Then she informed me that she would cut my balls off if I ever cheated. I thought she was delusional and not thinking straight, and I had a bad feeling that our future as husband and wife was in jeopardy. Then it happened one night. She came home 3 hours late without calling and leaving me worried and concerned. She walked in as if nothing was wrong and came over to give me a kiss, as if all was right with the world. To her shock, I shoved her backward and with the stare of death, let out a sentence that made her understand what I thought of our situation. "Nice of you to finally come home. Did you enjoy your friend tonight?" My wife had never heard me speak to her like that and immediately apologized and explained that her phone died and she lost track of time and would never do that again. "Were you with Brandon, Marie?" I asked. She looked down and didn't answer. I was angry and made it crystal clear that our marriage was on thin ice if this continued. "Marie, let me be clear. If I find out that you already him or if you've been with him intimately in any way, we're through. I will not live with an adulteress or be lied to." That shook her, and she swore that she had remained faithful and apologized and said she would stop. For the first time, I believed that Marie finally realized the seriousness of my demands. She did stop talking about him and his greatness, but she continued to go with him for lunch and drinks without telling me. The only thing that stopped was hearing about their time together and how great a man he was. 2 weeks later, during dinner, I finally asked her if she had stopped having lunch and drinks with Brandon. She touched my arm and gave me a smile, as if I was a child trying to soothe my feelings. In a sympathetic tone, she admitted that she was still seeing him but decided not to tell me so as not to hurt my feelings. To my disbelief, she didn't realize how angry or hurt I was after hearing her confession. It's what she said next that made my head explode. When she told me something that no normal man would put up with. "BBE, you know I love you, and that Brandon's only a friend. The thing is, he wants to take me to his company dinner function because his date cancelled on him today. He needs a companion, and since we're such good friends, I told him I would go with him. And that you would be okay with that." Shaking my head in disbelief, I said, "No, I'm not okay with it." "So no, you can't go with him. Damn it, Marie. You're still my wife, at least for the time being. Charlie, stop being a jealous old fool. He's our friend, and he needs my help. I'm going, and you'll just have to trust me. I promise you'll be okay, old fool." This guy has rubbed off on her, and now she's calling me the old fool. "Marie, if you go, I promise I won't be okay, and things between us will not be good. I can't physically stop you, but the answer is no, you can't go." Obviously, there was no sex that night or for the next week. I hardly talked to her because of my anger and frustration with this entire Brandon situation. She seemed to understand and stop badgering me about Brandon and the date. The following day after her confession, I got a call at work from Brandon. Apparently, Marie gave him my number, hoping he could convince me to change my mind. She was definitely going to get an earful when I got home later that night. "Charlie, old man, how are you?" Brandon asked. What a surprise. What can I do for you? I asked, waiting to see what the predator had in mind. Well, I called to apologize. I'm sure Marie told you that I asked her to help me out and be my companion to my company event. I realized it was a mistake to do that, and I am sorry if it caused any problems at home. Yes, it was quite shocking, and I told her how I felt, I said. Yes, she told me. Of course, you see, my mistake was I should have called you first and asked for your permission and not put Marie in that position. It should have been done man to man. I sat there stunned. The nerve of this guy was overwhelming. Listening to his confident, hypnotic voice was surreal and made me even angrier. So, old man, let me make it up to you and set you up with whatever you like. I can arrange season tickets to Manchester if that suits you. Brandon, are you asking me to trade my wife for some football tickets? Are you trying to turn my wife into a companion for merchandise? Do you think that little of her? Look, I think you have misread me. I don't share my wife with anyone. And if you call me old man or old chap one more time, I swear I will rip out your tongue next time we meet. Now, I'm quite capable of buying my own tickets. Let's just put all this in the past, shall we? I must insist that you leave Marie alone and find yourself another woman to keep you company, I said with obvious anger in my voice. It was almost like he heard nothing I said and just continued talking. Charlie, my friend, I'm sorry you feel that way because I really like Marie and wanted to ask your permission to let her accompany me to my event and I wanted your blessing. Please don't be angry with Marie. Even though she wants to go, this is on me. So would you reconsider her being my date for that one night? Brandon, listen closely. No, just stop asking. She is not going to go with you, and that's final. In fact, I want you to stop having lunch with her and seeing her after work for drinks. It's starting to impact our marriage, and I'm sure you can understand how I feel. Charlie, I'm sorry you feel that way, but we're just friends, and I don't intend to stop being her friend because you have some insecurities. I'm sorry you won't allow me this one favor after all I've done for you. I gave you those amazing tickets to the football and offered season tickets, but you just don't seem to appreciate my generosity. I already thanked you for the tickets, and like I said, I can buy my own football tickets now. Please piss off and stop interfering with my marriage, I said, slamming down the office phone. That night, I went home to a very subdued Marie. Clearly, she had heard about our conversation and didn't know how to act. Finally, she couldn't handle the silence anymore. I heard about your conversation with Brandon today. Did you have to be so rude? You hurt his feelings, she said. The look I gave her after asking me if I had to be so rude could have frozen our pond in midsummer. You and his feelings? It's interesting how you're worried about his feelings and not your husband's. And why did you give him my business phone number? Do you need to be with him that badly? Maybe I should just leave, and then you can be with your new boyfriend, I said. She looked down and said, I was hoping you two could become better friends, you know, so we could all go out together. I'm sorry how it turned out. I never wanted anyone to be hurt. Did you lose your mind, lady? I told him to stop taking you out to lunch and drinks because I don't want to have any more interaction with him for any reason. In case you have forgotten, you are a woman who is married. If you don't start behaving like one, I can guarantee that things will go from bad to worse, I told you. This infuriated her, and she expressed her displeasure by saying, stop acting like a jealous teenager. Nothing is going to happen to us despite the fact that we have been married for 20 years. I really hope that you are correct. My response was, I would hate to think that I have wasted the last 20 years of my life with the wrong woman. I hoped that she would come to her senses after hearing that comment because it appeared to shake her. That night, there was no other conversation, and there was also no sexual activity. In point of fact, I started sleeping in the room that belonged to our son because I was so enraged by her actions and comments that I needed to be by myself. After I moved into the other room, Marie was upset about it, and she made an effort to make amends to me over the course of the following few weeks. She claimed that she had stopped going to lunch with Brandon and was making an effort to become a more loving wife. It took some time, but I eventually began sleeping in our bed once more. However, I was still not interested in having sexual relations with a woman who was obviously in love with another man. Despite the fact that she was dissatisfied with that, she made numerous attempts to get me in the mood. My intuition was telling me to be vigilant if I wanted to save my marriage, and I knew deep down that she was still seeing Brandon. I knew this because I knew my intuition. It was with great regret that I came across the date of Brandon's event while I was reading through the text messages on my wife's mobile phone. Due to the fact that neither of us had passcodes on our phones and I had never spied on her before, there was no requirement for confidentiality. As I read her plans, I couldn't help but feel sad because I knew that our relationship was going to undergo a transformation. The information that I gained also made it much simpler for me to plan. It did not come as a surprise to me that her final few weeks of being the loving wife were a way for her to win me back and help me forget about the Brandon issue. The information that I discovered was that my sly wife was planning to surprise me by informing me that she would, in fact, be attending the event with Brandon on the Thursday night that followed. Following that, I had a thought and wanted to determine whether or not she would go with him or be faithful, despite the fact that I had forbidden her to be with him. Because of this, I informed my family that I would not be able to return home until late the following evening because I had a meeting scheduled for the 22nd of the following month in London. Because I was aware that Brandon's event was scheduled for the 22nd, I gave her the opportunity to either lie to me and pretend that she was going to attend the event or to come clean and tell me about her plans. To put it another way, I had no intention of remaining here. In the event that she made her plans public and attended the party, I would get out of the relationship and file for divorce. It would be the end of the marriage if she did it without telling me about it. Unfortunately, she did not engage in conversation with me and did not share her plans with me. She continued to fool me by pretending to be a loving and ideal wife on multiple occasions. Every night, I was treated to delicious dinners, my house was spotless, and I received affectionate kisses when I returned home from work. However, there was no discussion of Brandon or the upcoming event. I gave her a farewell kiss on Thursday morning, which I knew would be the last time we would ever see each other, and then I went to my office, even though I had no intention of going to London. In order to attend the event, I would stay the night at the same hotel where it was being held. I did consult with a lawyer during that time period, and I made arrangements for the paperwork that needed to be prepared for a divorce, as well as a possible date to serve the papers. If she did what I believed she was going to do, I offered to pay twice as much for the process server to accompany me to the hotel where the event was being held and to deliver the documents under my supervision, provided that she did what I anticipated she would do. That was the end of it. While I was attending Brandon's dinner engagement, I sat in the lobby wearing a disguise that was not overly obvious. I was wearing a medical mask, tinted glasses, and a ball cap. I was reading a paper while having a clear view of the front doors. Exactly as expected, Brandon arrived at the hotel at 8 o'clock in the evening, carrying my lovely wife on his arm. With her pert little breasts on display, she wore a little black dress, dark stockings, and high heels. Her breasts were highlighted. The fact that she did not remember to wear her bra for the event is obvious. They were laughing as they introduced themselves to other people in a joyful and celebratory manner, as if they had been a couple who had been in love. I had every reason to believe that they would show up, but I was not mentally prepared to witness their close relationship in its entirety. It was a miracle that I was able to keep my temper under control and record the event on my mobile device. When I was explaining to my son why his mother and I were going through a divorce, I would later share this information with him. I called her phone while I was watching her with Brandon, and I watched as Marie looked at her phone to see who was calling, and then she let the call go to voicemail rather than answering it. I felt as though someone had reached into my chest and pulled out my heart as I watched her ignore my call and turn her attention back to Brandon. It was at that very moment that all of my love and the years of dedication I had spent with Marie were swept away. Despite the fact that I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, I managed to keep them from falling and continue to leave a number of messages in an attempt to salvage what little we still had. This is 8 p.m., my sweetheart. Due to the fact that your phone went to voicemail, I hope you are doing well. I have a lot of love for you, and I will miss you. I had high hopes that she would pay attention to the messages, experience some level of guilt, and bail out of the party before things got out of hand. And there was still a possibility. She did not even bother to listen to the messages, even if she left the party or called me and admitted whatever she had done. On that particular evening, I remained in the vicinity of the dining area and observed them from a distance. Due to the fact that they acted as if they were a couple throughout the entire dinner, it was patently obvious that she was closer to him than she let on. I took precautions and refrained from coming into view. Following a number of dances and a few kisses, it became abundantly clear that they were about to depart from the dinner party at approximately 10 o'clock. The text had already informed me that he had a room at the hotel, and the £100 that I gave to the bellman was sufficient to secure the room number 1246 for me. Kim, the person who serves as the process server, arrived promptly at 10 o'clock, and we discussed my plans together. For her assistance, I gladly gave her the additional £200. Kim and I ascended the elevator at 11 o'clock at night and then made our way to room 1246 on foot. The door was knocked on by Kim, and we heard some movement in the area. At the time that I was standing to the side of the peephole, I heard a low voice coming from within the room. Brandon inquired further, "Who is it?" "Security, please open the door," Kim said as she positioned her identification card in front of the peephole. Although it was obvious that he did not read the identification that she presented, it was successful, and we heard the slide come off the door. It opened just enough to allow me to see Brandon's face, and before he could speak, I moved in front of Kim and kicked the door open by a significant amount. This caused Brandon to stumble backward, fall to the ground naked, and be in a state of shock. As he rolled in front of Marie, there was a female gasp that could be heard coming from within the room. As soon as she realized that I was standing there, her initial gasp gradually transformed into a piercing scream. She was obviously fresh, as evidenced by the fact that she was standing there naked with a white fluid dripping down her legs, while Brandon remained naked on the floor. My foot was placed on his neck, and I placed my entire £200 weight on Brandon's throat. I instructed him to remain still. After I made a motion to Kim, she went over to Marie and handed her the paperwork that was necessary for the divorce. In addition to informing her that she had been served, Kim took a picture of her standing there naked while holding the envelope in her hands. Upon her face was a look of complete and utter surprise. After I removed my wedding ring and threw it toward the wet spot on the bed, Marie witnessed my suffering and at long last understood the full extent of the consequences that her decisions had brought about. All of a sudden, she was interested in me rather than her boyfriend. "Marie, it's too late to do anything about it. My apologies for the significant error I made, and I really don't want to lose you. Although it may appear to be a bad thing, you are aware that I love you, and I do not wish to divorce you. Please allow me to accompany you back to your house, and I will do my best to explain everything and put things back in order." As she removed my boot from his throat and slammed it down on his exposed dick and balls, she pleaded with him to refrain from doing what she was about to do. For the purpose of ensuring that I had made the correct connection, I slammed my heel one more time. During the course of our marriage, that became the final scene. While I was standing over Brandon with my foot still on his neck, I gave Kim the instruction to leave me alone with the couple who had been cheating on me. Immediately after the door was shut, I turned my attention to my wife and spoke in a tone that was both desperate and angry. "Congratulations! You have left me with a broken heart and brought an end to our 20 years of being together, and you did it in the most terrible way possible. I was lied to and deceived by you, and then you allowed this part of you to be released. Consequently, you have put an end to the time that we spent together. The divorce papers should be signed, and you should not even consider returning home until Saturday afternoon. In order to get my belongings out of the house, I will need all day. You are welcome to remain in our apartment until it is sold, which shouldn't take too much time." After removing my boot from his throat and slamming it down on his exposed dick and balls, I said, "In the meantime, perhaps you could move in with this." For the purpose of ensuring that I had made the correct connection, I slammed my heel one more time. When Marie finally came to the realization that there was no way to save the marriage, she reluctantly signed the divorce papers. This came after she had spent 2 months trying to convince me to interact with her. The whole story was relayed to our son by her. It is to her credit that she accepted responsibility for the annihilation of the joyful years we spent together. Following the sale of the apartment, we divided the proceeds and went our separate ways. Brandon was out of commission and wanted nothing to do with Marie, who was now a single woman. He told her to get over herself and find a new man. Marie also told him to get over herself, particularly when she is carrying an additional 20 pounds and is not as desirable as she thought she was after the predator blew all that smoke up her dress. A 46-year-old woman who has been divorced does not have the best of both worlds. I met a cute 37-year-old divorced woman with a daughter who was 9 years old after I had been going to the gym for 6 months and had lost my gut, gotten into good shape, and lost my stomach. Patricia had an incredible body, and she admired a man who was faithful and loving. She went out of her way to treat me like a king. I was able to get along famously with her daughter, Melissa, and I took great pleasure in spoiling her. At the time of Jonathan's graduation, Marie had reached the age of 50 and appeared to be her age. As a result of the way her life had transpired, she was a single woman who lived by herself. The fact that she was upset after seeing me with my new family was something that I learned from Jonathan. When she saw how happy I was with my new, pretty wife and beautiful daughter, it made her sad and jealous. In a conversation with our son, Marie expressed her regret for the actions she had taken and the way she had treated me. It was still difficult for her to forgive herself for allowing herself to be enticed by someone else. It was through the experience of losing my love that she realized what she had given up and how much she longed for her previous life, she shared with Jonathan. And all of this suffering and loss as a result of her own egotistical desires. Dear listener, until we meet again, if you have made it this far, I would appreciate it if you would click the button that says subscribe. This will be of great assistance.